It sounds unreal at first, almost like one of those exaggerated stories you hear and immediately question. A soccer match turning into a war. It feels too dramatic, too extreme, like something made up for attention. But this actually happened. And the most disturbing part is, the match itself wasn't really the cause. It was just the moment everything finally broke. The final spark, in a situation that had already been building for years. This was the football war, a short but deadly conflict between El Salvador and Honduras. And while it lasted only a few days, the tension behind it had been growing quietly, steadily, for a long time. To really understand how something like this could happen, you have to go back. Not to the match, but to the years before it. Because wars don't just appear out of nowhere. They build, slowly, quietly. Sometimes in ways people don't notice, or don't want to notice. El Salvador was a small country, but its population was growing rapidly, too rapidly. Land was limited, opportunities were limited, and for many people, there simply wasn't enough space to live, work, or survive. So thousands of Salvadorans began crossing into Honduras, not as invaders, but as workers, as families, as people looking for a chance to build a life. At first, and it seemed manageable, but over time, things started to change. In Honduras, land became more valuable, jobs became harder to find, and slowly, resentment began to grow. Not overnight, not loudly, but quietly, in conversations, in attitudes, in the way people began to see each other. Because when resources are limited, even small changes feel like threats. And then, the situation escalated. The Honduran government introduced land reforms. On the surface, it was about fairness, about redistributing land to local citizens. But in reality, it meant something else for thousands of Salvadoran immigrants. They were pushed out. Families who had lived there for years suddenly lost everything. Land taken, homes abandoned, lives uprooted. Some were forced to leave quickly, with almost nothing. Others faced hostility, violence, intimidation. And these weren't just isolated incidents. They became stories. Stories that spread. Stories that crossed the border. And when those stories reached El Salvador, they didn't stay quiet. They turned into anger. And anger spreads fast. Now imagine that tension, that frustration, that growing resentment, building over time. No resolution, no real solution, just pressure, increasing day by day. And then, something seemingly unrelated enters the picture, a football match. In 1969, El Salvador and Honduras were scheduled to play each other in a World Cup qualifying series. On paper, it was just sport, just a game, 90 minutes, a result, and that's it. But by this point, it wasn't just a game anymore. It had become symbolic, something people attached their emotions to, their anger, their identity, their pride. The first match took place in Honduras, and the atmosphere was already tense. The stadium was full, loud, intense. But outside the stadium, things were different. The Salvadoran team didn't just face competition, they faced hostility. Fans gathered outside their hotel the night before the match, shouting, making noise, making sure they couldn't sleep. It wasn't just support for their own team, it was psychological pressure, constant, relentless. By the time the players stepped onto the field, they were already exhausted. Honduras won that match, and the reaction wasn't just celebration, it was something heavier, more emotional, more aggressive. When the Salvadoran team returned home, the narrative had already changed. It wasn't just about losing, it was about how they lost. The conditions, the treatment, the hostility, and those details fueled something bigger. Anger grew. Then came the second match. This time in El Salvador, and everything intensified. Now the roles were reversed. The Honduran team arrived and faced the same kind of pressure, but stronger, more aggressive. Because now, this wasn't just about sport anymore. It had become personal. The atmosphere was charged, the tension visible. El Salvador won that match. But again, the result wasn't the real story. Violence broke out, not just inside the stadium, in the streets. And now, things were spiraling. The final match was set on neutral ground. But by this point, it didn't matter where it was played, because the tension had already reached its limit. El Salvador won the deciding match, and shortly after, they made a move that changed everything. They cut diplomatic ties with Honduras, and then everything escalated. On July 14, 1969, El Salvador launched a military attack. Not symbolic, not metaphorical. Real war, airstrikes, ground forces, explosions. And suddenly, what had been building for years became reality. The conflict lasted only about 4 days, but those 4 days were enough. Thousands of people died, families lost everything, homes destroyed, communities shattered, and for many, life would never return to what it was before. The world watched, trying to understand, how did this happen? How does a soccer match lead to war? But that question misses something important, because the match didn't cause the war, it revealed it. It exposed everything that had been building underneath. All the tension, all the resentment, all the unresolved problems, because sometimes conflict doesn't start with a single moment. It builds slowly, quietly, until something small triggers everything. And in this case, that trigger was a game that carried more meaning than anyone wanted to admit. A game that became a symbol, and once that symbol ignited, there was no stopping what followed. The war ended quickly, but the impact didn't. The damage stayed, the loss stayed. The relationship between the two countries was changed for years, and the story remained, because it feels impossible, a soccer match leading to war. But when you look closer, you realize something. It wasn't about the match, it was about everything behind it. The pressure, the anger, the fear, the lack of resolution, and how dangerous those things become when they are ignored, because sometimes the biggest events in history don't begin with something big. They begin with something small, something ordinary, something that seems harmless until it isn't. And if this story makes you pause, even for a moment, that's because it should, because it shows something real, something important. That conflict doesn't always start where we think it does. It starts earlier, deeper, and by the time we finally notice it, it's already too late. So if you want more stories like this, real stories, powerful stories, the kind that change how you see the world, then stay here. Because history isn't just about what happened, it's about understanding why it happened. And the next story might be even more unbelievable than this one.